Check 1 2. Check 1 2 1 2.
Hey, where are you going? You gonna sleep under there?
I'm gonna count to 3. You better be over here now. 1, 2. Hurry up.
And a half.
You go back in there right now. Or you get safe. Hurry up.
see you.
I have to have a good head. You can be on a long time. And I missed you. I did. I really missed you. And Richard really missed you. Oh, my guys.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we're still getting back. I'm still getting I guess, I don't know. Well, Ron came by to see us. Here was the after, and brought an old dad.
He already chose the one who will rule the world. That's an easy answer. I'm not going to have to ask that. However, God still allows nations to have power so they can protect and care for its citizens. And it's the people's duty to submit to their gods. Right? That's in Romans 13. But when kings or leaders leave the bounds of God and pursue their own power, they will fail. It is best for kings of the world to pay homage to God, or they will have his judgment. This was a long chapter. Nevertheless, we can remain confident that God will never allow any kingdom to achieve complete world dominance. God has allowed the world to advance technologically because it is kind, because he is kind and lets the rain fall on both the just and the unjust. That's Matthew 5:45. Therefore, let's hope in the power of God and his promise, and that he keeps history moving no matter what's happening, right? It's all going towards his plan. Chapter 4 is where it's called impacts and intersections, okay? This is where we see Israel starting to slip up, right? A lot of different kings popping up, okay? And good and bad, but a lot of bad ones, right? So what's great about studying history is that it affords us to see the movements of the world from different perspectives, right? God is the God of all history, and thus we see his hand moving and shaping sacred and secular history to bring out his redemptive history. We see why God allows kings and nations to rise and fall like Israel, like David and Solomon, but also we talked about China and Greece, right? How they're rising up during this time too, okay? Canaanites and Egyptians too, and why God allows it to happen. Considering all three of these perspectives of history, we can see a fuller picture of God at work and in the great movements of history. Whether it is David with his promise of an eternal kingdom, or Solomon who says nothing matters outside of God, right? We discern the great intersections of sacred, secular, and redemptive history and strengthen our understanding of history and in all its vibrant color and beauty. Chapter 5 is when the Israelites started to get captured by the Assyrians and the Babylonians, right? This is called captivity and hope. So among power shifts and changes, God speaks words of hope, because we saw the rise of the Assyrians, and then we saw the rise of the Babylonians, right? Through wars, pain, misery, and suffering and death, God spoke words of hope. Although they are in captivity, God says, don't worry, I'm still here for you, okay? And he sent out all those prophets, but we're going to get to them here in a second. Events in this chapter remind us of several truths. One truth is through Hosea, that we see that no matter what sins we have committed, God has laid out a plan for repentance for us. We saw through Isaiah the hope that God himself will come to earth to help his people. We saw through Daniel that God is always in control of this world, and that no king, no matter how evil, can take power away from him. We even see through a secular person, Cyrus, right? We see that God can use even a pagan king to bring about great good for his people. Because Cyrus allowed, right? Cyrus was Persian, right? He's from Persia. He allowed all the Hebrews to go back home, right? And this is where we pick up, right? Is the Hebrews are leaving captivity, going back home, and they're starting to rebuild, right? So in chapter 6, here are some questions here. In what ways were the 4th century BC and modern 20th century similar? Okay. What are some of the military advancements that occurred during the 4th century BC? What was it behind the tension between the Samaritans and the Jews when the Jews return to Jerusalem to rebuild the city? What do we learn about the nature of God in the story of Esther? How does this story build your faith? And what are some of the differences between the teachings of Confucius and teaching of the Bible? All right, so I want to say, like, this is a lot of, it's lecture type, but I also want you guys to also interrupt as well, all right? Because I don't want just me talking the whole time. I do have questions embedded. Also, I just come up with some on the spot. But interrupt me, right? Because I want you guys' thoughts too.
Okay.
All right, so go ahead.
You said interrupt you.
Oh, thank you. So we're going to set the stage here. We're looking at 500 to 400 BC. Okay. Political revolutions and technological advancements occur throughout history, right? These events should be studied carefully to understand their lasting impact on humanity. In this chapter, so chapter 6, right, War, Restoration, and Reflection, focuses on key events between 500 to 400 BC that forever altered world history, especially for Israel. Okay? So we're going to look at events like the Jews coming home. Okay? We're going to look at the Battle of Thermopylae. Okay? We're going to look at some of the teachings of Socrates and Confucius, and the composition of the books of Ezra, Nehemiah, and Esther. All right? Oh, I forgot. Thermopylae, Confucius, Socrates, and the books. All right, so much like the 20th century, the 4th century BC is full of warfare. Okay, we're going to be seeing a lot of violence and bloodshed in this chapter. So, Kathy Decker's favorite. Okay. Come on now, click. So it's kind of hard to read, sorry, but this is just a pie chart showing the most lives lost during our wars, at least our main wars. So you can see which war was the most costly. Yeah, World War II, right? You can see that it's over 50%, right? In the blue, there's World War I, okay? And then in the red is Vietnam, okay? In the green, in the yellow, that's Korea in the 1950s. The pink there, that is China. China. Why would China be on there? Right? Yeah. I'll get there in a minute. That light blue is Russia, and the green is Iraq and Iran. What do all these have in common here? What do you think? World War II, World War I, Vietnam, China, Russia. What do they all have in common? Huh? Well, yeah, we know that. These are a lot of revolutions happening this time, right? A lot of, I think Austin said, a lot of cultural revolutions, right? A lot of Marxist, communist stuff going on here. China, Russia, Vietnam, even Korea, they're fighting it. There's a lot of revolutions there. Oh, and the white is just other. That's other. All right. So, however, we will also see restoration with the Jews returning to their homeland and rebuilding the temple. Also, we see many advancements in ideas of humanitarian rights and unsuccessful attempts to eliminate war and aggression. Okay? All the while, though, even though all this is happening, God's plan is still loading, right? Everything's still working towards his plan. So we're picking up right after Nebuchadnezzar's dream about the statue, right? So if you want to go to Daniel 2:37 through 39. I put A there because it's just the first part of verse 39. If someone would like to read that. Daniel 2, verse 37 through the first half of 39. Carlin's got it.
Thanks. Daniel 2, 37 through 39. You, O king, are a king of kings. For the God of heaven has given you a kingdom, power, strength, and glory. And wherever the children of men dwell, or the beasts of the fields and the birds of the heavens, he has given them into your hand and has made you ruler over them all. But you are this head of gold. But after you shall arise another kingdom inferior to yours,
Right
then
there.
another.
Stop right there. Right there. Yeah, so he is the gold head, but we're past Babylon now, right? Babylon's out. Now we're talking about who? Persia, right? They're the chests, right, and arms of silver, right? They are stronger than Babylon, but are they as glorious as Babylon? No, right? Gold's way more precious than silver, right? But not as strong. All right, so who said this quote? In this world, nothing can be said to be certain except death and taxes. Ben Franklin, right? Good old Ben Franklin, right? But could we add a third certainty? What do you think that is? What is a third certainty that we can add to this world? War, right? Wars. Someone give her some candy for answering that. Okay. Yes, war. So in chapter 5, we discuss Nebuchadnezzar's dream and the progression of empires that would rise to after Babylon, right? But what do they all have in common? All these empires have in common that came after Babylon. Well, how do you think they rose to power? Revolution, right? War, right? War. They didn't just say, hey, it's our turn now. No, they fought for it, right? They fought for it. So the Persian Empire, okay? This is the largest empire in the ancient world, even larger than Rome. You can see here, kind of. East and west here. So east, it went as far as like Central Asia and India, all the way to Egypt, to North Africa, and even into a little bit in the very, very southeast of Europe, like in Turkey and stuff like that, modern day. So this is a very large empire, very large. Okay? But something unique about Persia is that they allowed freedom of religion. So you didn't have to follow what they said, like Babylon, like Assyria and Egypt, all these other ones. No, you could practice what you wanted. Victorious nations would typically, spot here. They would typically carry off all the idols, right, of the vanquished and keep them as trophies. We read about that a lot in Scripture, right? Because they believed that the more gods that you collected, the more power that you had. Okay? So when Babylon did this with Israel, when they took all the silver and gold from their temple and added Yahweh to their collection of gods. So, hey, we have all these gods, we're super powerful, right? But Persia came in and said, no, I don't think so, right? You guys remember, what story actually in the Bible shows us when Persia took over? Handwriting on the wall, right? Yeah. When a descendant of Nebuchadnezzar, right, who was not a good guy, right, saw the handwriting on the wall, that same day, Persia came in. That same day. But after Persia defeated Babylon, they allowed all the captured gods to go to their own temples, and the displaced people to return home and rebuild their own temples. So pretty nice, right? Pretty cool. Who was king of Persia when that happened? Anyone know? Cyrus. Cyrus was. Okay. Here are 6 different Persian kings named in the Bible. So there's in the first column here is the English name, right? And in the third column to the right is the biblical name, right? So we see Cyrus in there, okay? We do see Darius, right? We see Xerxes. They could be called something different in the Bible, okay? We see their date of when they were king, and we see the biblical background of like what book and what chapter that they're mentioned in, all right? But we're actually going to focus on Darius, okay? Darius the Great. He's mentioned in the book of Ezra, Ezra 5 through 6, chapters 5 through 6, okay? So Persia reaches its zenith under Darius, right? Under its peak power, under its peak size, right? Empire size. However, there's something going on in the area of Greece, right? Ionia, which is now Western Turkey. The city-states of Athens and Eretria are in rebellion against Persia. Who would have thought rebellion, right? The rebellion is squelched, but Darius holds a grudge on this. Okay? So he wants revenge. And this revenge leads to the Greco-Persian Wars. Okay? The Greco-Persian Wars. So the first time that Persia invades Greece, okay, which is about 492 BC, ended with an Athenian victory at the Battle of Marathon, which is around 490 BC. Remember, BC counts down, right? So like we're not going backwards here, right? It counts down. The Persians even outnumbered Athens 2-1. But the Greeks were able to divide the Persian army, forcing them to retreat. Does anyone know anything about the Battle of Marathon? How that might have an impact on today? Well, legend has it there's a Greek soldier named Phidippides ran from Marathon to Athens to say that the Greek army had won. And that's about 26 miles, right? Or the length of a modern-day marathon run. So this is the inspiration for the marathon event at the Olympics. Okay? So here he is running. You can see on that map there. On the right is where he ran from. That's marathon, and he ran to Athens to the left. But you guys got to know one thing about this, and this is why I'll never run a marathon. Okay? He died after he got there. Okay? So if you learn anything from today, don't run marathons, maybe? I don't know. All right, so Darius dies before he's able to attack, to regroup and attack again. But his son Xerxes becomes king and takes on his father's cause against the Greeks. Okay, I think that name Xerxes sounds familiar to probably all of us, right? So the Greeks realize, oh, that clock is actually on time. Okay. The Greeks realized that they would be vastly outnumbered again, right? You guys remember the size of this empire, right? The Persian Empire. They got tons of different cultural warriors coming in here. They have the immortals, right? They're called immortals because it looks like that they just never die, right? Because they all look the same. Anyways, their plan was to delay them long enough for the Greek navy to attack. So they looked to force the Persians down the narrow coastal pass of Thermopylae. Does it ring a bell, right? Thermopylae? I know Chuck knows, right? This would reduce the number of soldiers who could engage in battle at one time, because obviously they'd be overwhelmed, right? It's a long shot, but it's worth a try, right? So we see here, this is kind of a map of where the battle was, okay? Chuck knows this movie, right? 300. I just like maps, so I put maps on there. All right. So wave upon wave, the Spartans entrenched themselves deeper into the pass. Persian casualties, guys, they're literally piling up. Like if you watch the movie, which you know is completely accurate, they literally had a wall of bodies there, right? And I don't doubt that something like that happened. Because this lasted for 2 days, right? Lasted for 2 days. Despite this, a local peasant told Xerxes of a path that would allow the Persians to flank the Spartan forces, ultimately leading to their defeat. And a really cool comic book, right? The Greeks eventually gained the upper hand and drove Xerxes out of the land, though, right? That's in the second 300 movie. So the loss of the Greco-Persian wars didn't affect Persia all that much. I mean, that's just kind of a small part of their empire, right? They had a lot going on here. However, it led to a lot of advancement for the Greeks. Okay, many city-states were brought together through a common enemy, but unification was still a long way off. Remember, they're not called, like, the area is called Greece, but they're not a country called Greece, right? There's Athens, there's Sparta, there's Colossae, right? All these different city-states. But there's a chance, right? There's a chance. All right, so a couple questions here. In what ways were the 4th century BC and the modern 20th century similar? I don't have answers on here, by the way. Wars, a lot of wars, a lot of fighting, a lot of violence, okay?
Raise
A
your
lot
hand.
of unrests, right? Revolutions, things like that, okay? What are some of the military advancements that occurred during the 4th century BC? They weren't named specifically, but we just talked about a couple of them.
Is this where iron comes into play?
Well, I know that the Spartans had a lot of bronze. But I mean, yeah, iron is still, but that's not what I'm looking for. Well, what do we read about with Greece and the Persians? They're outnumbered, right? So how do you do that? How do you fight against an army when you're vastly outnumbered? You got to outsmart them, right? So the first part was to divide them, right? If they're split up, they have a less chance of winning, right? Then what did the Spartans do? Kind of, yeah. They funneled them in, right? They took us because they obviously know the land, right? So they know, hey, we're going to fight here. We're going to draw them in here and fight them on our terms, right? And unfortunately, some Judas guy, right, stabbed them in the back, literally, right? Literally. All right, we'll go a little bit more here. So that's all the war stuff. Now we're talking about restoration. Okay, so war wasn't the only thing that marked this period. The Persian Empire greatly benefited the beleaguered. These are the book's words, not mine. Okay, I just use them to sound smart. Okay, nation of Israel. King Cyrus allowed the Israelites to return home and rebuild the temple. However, local enemies tried to stop this from happening. Okay, so after conquering the northern kingdom of Israel, the Assyrians removed many Jews from their home and forced others from other countries to live in Jerusalem. The Israelites who remained intermarried with these other nations, causing a mixing of ancestry and religion. What are they known as? The Samaritans, right? The Samaritans. Okay. So some Samaritans who remembered their Jewish heritage wanted to help build the temple. Okay? But the Jews refused their help. Why do you think that is? Why do they refuse their help?
The Samaritans had basically disavowed the Bible. They only believed the first 5 books of the Bible were really from God,
Yeah.
and that was just an abomination to the Jews.
Yeah. So not really believing in the scriptures, right? But also they're mixed, right? They're not fully Jewish. I think that has a part to it too. So this set these Samaritans at odds with the Jews. So let's go to Ezra 4, 1 through 6. Someone can read that. Ezra 4, 1 through 6. You got it, Mike? Remember Ezra, Nehemiah, Esther, Job. Anybody else got it? You ready? Oh, Ezra 4, 1 through 6. You can want to read into my neck?
Sure. Ezra 4, 1 through 6. Now when the adversaries of Judah and Benjamin heard that the descendants of the captivity were building the temple of the Lord God of Israel, they came to Zerubbabel and the heads of the fathers' houses and said to them, "Let us build with you, for we seek your God as you do, and we have sacrificed to him since the days of Esarhaddon, king of Assyria, who brought us here." But Zerubbabel and Joshua and the rest of the heads of the fathers' houses of Israel said to them, "You may do nothing with us to build a house for our God, but we alone will build to the Lord God of Israel, as King Cyrus, the king of Persia, has commanded us." Then the people of the land tried to discourage the people of Judah. They troubled them in building and hired counselors against them to frustrate their purposes all the days of Cyrus, king of Persia, even until the reign of Darius, king of Persia. In the reign of Ahasuerus, in the beginning of his reign, they wrote an accusation against the inhabitants of Judah and Jerusalem.
Yeah, so again, why did the Jews not want their help? Because obviously some Samaritans did want to help, right? They're like, hey, I am Jewish in a way, right? I want to help do this. But they said no, right? What was their reason for not getting the Samaritans' help?
Because they hadn't kept the law.
They hadn't kept the law, right? Yep. They're mixed, yeah, they're mixed. And I think too here, because they're like, well, King Cyrus told us to do it. He said that we should do it. Not Samaritans, he said that us Jews who were in captivity should rebuild it. I'm going to stop right there, okay? And we'll pick up here next week.